you to our last Incubate Energy Lunch and Learn webcast of 2021. We will start the series up again in January, and we will highlight other projects from the Incubate Energy Lab series that happened in 2021, like this one. This webcast is being recorded. By participating in this call, you consent that your name, voice, and contributions will be included in our recorded materials. Phones and computers have been muted on entry. To unmute yourself, click on the microphone at the bottom of your screen, or if you're dialing in, press *6. You may be double muted, so double check that. We would like to have a very interactive chat, so please go to the bottom right-hand side of your screen and click the chat button. Feel free to introduce yourself, ask questions, provide any comments, and please select share with everyone on the call unless you need it to be a private chat, and then you can pick who you would like to chat with. We will also have a poll during this webcast. You can find the poll by going to the bottom right-hand side of your screen as well, looking for those three little dots and select polling. We will leave this open for the whole meeting, and I will send out a reminder via chat during the webcast just to remind you to go in there, and if you haven't finished the poll, just to go ahead and do that. Dynamhex is a project from our 2021 cohort, and it has been one of the more unique projects that we've run in the course of our cohort. And it couldn't be more relevant as we deal with all of the climate crisis we are today. And I'm just going to pass it back over to Patrick. Thank you.
Thank you so much to EPRI and to our partner team at Ameren. We worked with such a great group from Eli, Jacqueline, Ken, Mark, and Gwen. We wanted to say thank you specifically to them, as well as the Ameren large customer service reps, engineers, and everyone else who was so kind to us during the experience. We also want to thank the great team at EPRI, Shiva, Angie, Annie, Eric, and Ram. Thank you very much for all the support and during this program. My name is Patrick Hosty. I'm the COO of Dynamhex, and on this call is Dr. Sunny Sanwar, our CEO, Ann Davlin, Eric Schwartz, and Alec Calder, our Vice President of Business Development, who will be speaking a little bit later. Dynamhex is helping expedite actionable data and building level solutions by taking climate action plans to the next level. Personally, I have a background in municipal finance, and I saw that data on green bonds was not personalized or standardized, and was excited to join our technical founder, Sunny, because Dynamhex is a unique way to quantify emissions at the building level and show how specific solutions would impact any building's footprint. And we showed that with our project. Next slide, please. Great. So our project earlier this year, Dynamhex deployed our decarbonization as a service product with Ameren to simplify the complex integration of energy use and carbon footprint critical for decarbonization. The geospatial modules calculated the emissions for each asset and use built-in data analytics to deliver targeted, prescriptive roadmaps for utility customers to meet their decarbonization goals. Dynamhex energy and emissions reducing suggestions were personalized to each business or residence in Ameren's territory, as well as each recommendation then matched to Ameren's existing programs and products. So Ameren's customers were able to look at and take the next step in their decarbonization journey through automated data capabilities. Alex will talk about our data and our reporting process a little later, but Ameren isn't the only utility we're helping, but each utility is taking a leading role in engaging their stakeholders on achieving their decarbonization goals. What we've also found is that the lack of standardized data and understanding can significantly limit the meaningful engagement with stakeholders. The majority of businesses in the United States are small businesses and small communities who often don't have the necessary data expertise and capital to create and manage their decarbonization plans. With Dynamhex, the customers and the community were able to visualize this complex decisions and holistic report sustainable progress at the program and community level with our platform. So what you see in the upper right or my upper left of the screen is the Ameren service territory, which consists of roughly half of Missouri and 3/4 of Illinois. And in 24 days, we were able to analyze the decarbonization footprint of that service territory. And then Dynamex's decarbonization as a service platform, or as we call it, DAS, is helping across multiple states so that each state's utility customers can better understand their own footprint and any decarbonization commitment they have set. Relative to Ameren's existing initiatives, projects, and services, such as demand response, community solar, energy efficiency, and electrification programs. So this platform is helping municipal, corporate, and institutional customers with climate targets with an actionable plan to address their current emissions. Taking a community-specific view, the platform promotes social equity by engaging diverse and inclusive voices and summarizes sustainable performances and outcomes such as energy, cost, environmental justice, and emissions reductions. With ongoing data integrations, we can help significantly to expedite the progress towards corporate and regional carbon emission goals. Figure 2 in the upper right is a representation of our platform, showing the geospatial model, goal setting tool, pathways to decarbonize in the middle, as well as specific building level information in the upper right, as well as a card for decarbonization on the bottom right. So with decarbonization as a service, we use bottom-up modeling based on insights specific to each individual building with increased accuracy, flexibility, and depth of analysis. As compared to current top-down traditional models, we found that we could take marketing to a new level with building specific modules, allowing our, during our engagement, utility account managers and program managers to pinpoint individual building and talk to individual building owners that can benefit from the recommendations and improvements. So since Dynamhex brings historical building upgrade information, permitting records, and other publicly available data and financial information, our software is able to establish relevant demographic and ethnographic predictors, shedding a light on which building owners have the highest propensity to carry out which of the programs. So in the bottom left, our figure 3 is shows each individual municipal customer that we helped. These novel approaches and new use cases emerged during those customer demos with Ameren, ranging from regional greenhouse gas footprint in a 5-county area in St. Louis, both Illinois and Missouri, as well as uptake data from the city of Urbana, Illinois. As part of the demo, we were also able to create a portal for utility customers to simply transfer energy consumption data programmatically through a single sign-on process, therefore bypassing the lengthy and manual process of and request forms, paperwork, and workflows. This significantly improved the customer experience. Next slide, please. Since our project, a lot has happened towards climate that we should all be prepared for, like COP26, which is setting new standards and showing how important data is in helping utilities help their customers like cities. We saw this in our project. Now customers want data and have expectations of their utility. With that in mind, there's a poll in the chat on my screen. It is that way. And I would encourage all of our attendees to please answer the poll. I'll take a second and do it. Let's do that. Okay, so I just did mine. It hopefully doesn't take too long. and we can maybe see if we get answers.
We've started getting some answers in right now.
Oh, great. We'll see. Survey says.
Let's see. Right now, 7 people have answered yes to the question number 1, current plan to act. Only 1 no. I'll leave this open a little bit longer so we can get a more accurate reading of everyone. But right now we have 9 people who've completed, 6 people who are in the process, and 17 who have not started.
Great. With COP26, there was, I think there was, if you were going to look at some of the negative repercussions from it, I think there were a lot of people frustrated with the lack of action, and that a lot of folks were talking more. And immediately afterwards, we got a lot of indications from Washington that climate would be a focus of Build Back Better. So that it seems like some of our leaders in Washington are putting a greater and more specific focus on climate action in some of its legislation, which we think will lead to more and greater focus on environmental justice, affordable housing, and the nuances and differences between reporting standards and data sources, which can make it difficult for building owners to coordinate with power utilities and municipalities, even when they legitimately want to. We're seeing that data could be that driving force that could be a great tool to help utilities and their customers better coordinate. So do we have the rest of the polling in, or all polling? We'll close it for now and maybe leave it open towards the end. I'll ask Angie one more time if
we have 13 people right now.
Oh, sweet. What were the?
So let's see. Right now, question 1, 11 people said yes. 1 person said no. Question 2. I'm closing the slide or closing the poll, so it'll take just a second, but we should have the results here.
This is, I think, what we would expect, and I'll ask you to move the slide forward. So what you see here is that the need for standardized data is probably more important than ever, like programs like Build Back Better. 68% of utility customers have a decarbonization target, and this accounts for roughly 65% of the total U.S. population. So governments at all levels will want help from their utility. And also on this call is Alex Calder, who's our Vice President of Business Development, who's also been helping our utility customers with this question. So Alex, I'll turn it over for you to move forward.
I believe.
All right,
I believe you may be double. Yeah.
I was double muted. You warned us and everything, and I still blew it. Do you mind moving on to the next slide, please? All right, so Patrick, thanks a ton. Everybody, happy Tuesday. Hope you're having a great day. Really excited to have your attention today and really appreciate it. I'm gonna walk through our product in the next few slides, but if you walk away from today with anything, I hope it's these 3 things. When we're working with you, we bring carbon reducing data to each and every single customer. The second thing is that we can ingest utility level data to improve our estimates for carbon footprints for every single customer. And then the third thing, and probably the most important, is that we can use those estimates to target particular customers with particular utility programs. So if you have rooftop solar, for example, that you have a rooftop solar program, for example, that's focused on the commercial sector, we can identify every commercial target within your territory. We can measure the impact of a rooftop solar program for that particular customer, and we can identify the top 100, 200, 300 customers for you and help push out some of those programs to those customers. So that is really Dynamhex in a nutshell. And over the next 2 slides, I'll talk a little bit about how we do that. So here's just a list of some of the data that we're pulling in to come up with our upfront greenhouse gas inventory estimates. So we're pulling in data like how big is a building, what year was it built, what is it zoned for, what part of the country is it in, how much sun does it get, to come up with a carbon footprint to sort of use as a baseline for each individual address to see what their carbon footprint is. Based on those same pieces of data, we can also recommend carbon reduction strategies. So if it is a house that has 12 tons of carbon a year, we can say this house would likely take these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps: smart thermostat, rooftop solar, community solar, to reduce their carbon footprint down to 5 metric tons. And there's an ability in the platform to reduce the rest. Angie, if you don't mind moving it on to the next slide. So the question is sort of, how do we use that information to engage customers? And I wanted you to see sort of what that looks like here. I'm a visual learner myself, and so just seeing sort of what we're doing. So there's 2 reports here. The leftmost report is a report that represents a population of buildings. So let's just say that you wanted an analysis of all of the commercial properties in a particular zip code in your territory. We're using a really relevant example right now. So if Build Back Better is passed, there's up to $15 billion set aside right now focused on improvements in lower income housing and decarbonization in those areas. And so if you said, hey, we'd love to know where are all of these areas, what are the largest opportunities, and what solutions make the most sense for that sector, we would be able to programmatically put out a report that sort of gives you a high level analysis and also drills down to each individual address if you'd like to target those customers with your particular programs. So that's sort of what that report on the left shows, is representing a whole large population of buildings that you have a target for, or the country has a target for, that you're looking to help meet. On the right, what you see is what we think is really helpful in engaging customers with, and that is an individual and address specific and unique carbon reduction strategy. So it's a little bit small here, but if you look at that tallest gray bar on the left, that is our estimated carbon footprint for that building. Again, based on how big it is, what year it was built, where it is in the country, and what it's zoned for. And we're using basically whatever it's zoned for, we're using their load profile, their demand profile, and mapping it to the generation stack in that territory to come up with a fairly accurate carbon footprint. If we're able to ingest their utility bill data, then we can make that estimate even more accurate. So from there, we suggest the 5 things that address could do to reduce their carbon footprint. And each individual person could say, hey, we actually already upgraded our HVAC, so we know that no longer is an issue, but we haven't installed a smart thermostat yet. Or, oh wow, there's a rooftop solar rebate in our territory. Maybe we should explore that. And then they could offset the rest. And what I want you to focus on here, if you don't mind, is in the bottom third of this report is actually, so we've identified carbon mitigation strategies, but at the bottom, what we're trying to do is connect each individual address to that carbon reduction strategy. So if your utility has a rooftop solar program, here we can measure the impact of installing rooftop solar on that house or on that commercial building, And then there's a click through to your site where they can reach the appropriate resources to go. Sort of, it's a qualified lead gen situation where they can now click through, submit to you, and you can reach out. And this does a lot of the sort of prospecting for you, and also a lot of the reach out. And we're able to work with you through all of your different programs. Some of them might not even be energy intensive, and list them all here so that all of the customers can get them in one place that's simple and easy and digestible to anybody who's carbon conscious or even curious about the topic. So our goal really is to make sustainability or carbon reduction easy, and we're doing in this very simple one-page form to reach out to every customer. So I'm hoping that that sort of resonates with some of you and that you're thinking about some of the programs that you already have implemented, or also programs that you're considering. So maybe you have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 programs. We can actually help you refine the results and prospect those programs before you launch them. So we could say, hey, the best bang for your buck is installation services because this is the size of that opportunity in this particular zip code. And then the day that you decide to launch that program, we can reach every single customer in your territory with that piece of information and how to reach out to you. So that's really a start to finish use case that I hope sort of helps with the questions here. So with that, I'm going to sort of pause and turn it over to you all for any questions for our team, whether it's surrounding the data or our outreach to customers. We'd love to hear your feedback and see if you're interested in exploring an opportunity with us. So thank you all very much for your time, and on behalf of Patrick and Sunny and Ann as well, really appreciate it.
I'm not seeing any questions here in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself, ask any questions.
Hey, this is Rick Johnson with Entergy. Just a question about applicability to industrial operations and customers. You know, this looks more like a small business sort of application here, but can you kind of talk through how this would work for a large industrial?
Yeah, maybe I can start, and Patrick and Alex or Andy can kind of fill in. So we typically, you know, when we deploy in territory, we have to make it compatible with local government inventory standards. So they have it broken down by residential, commercial, industrial, transportation, and other. So we do go through industrial. We do have next classification for each facility based on if it's like a steel or machinery or pharmaceutical, and we apply different fuel types, so distillate fuel oil, propane, other types of liquid fuels for heavy industrials, and we derive a similar report to the one you see on your right hand side, but only using the industrial GHG inventory. So that is something we do cover. The interventions are different, you know, it's process updates, emerging, you know, like hydrogen conversations. So we do that estimation, and then the reduction strategies would be focused only on that industrial sector that we're building out within the platform. If you had any kind of ideas on which specific industry that could be helpful.
Well, I mean, our territory is heavy industrial in terms of petrochemical and refining and chemical manufacturing, et cetera. So, I mean, with that, I'm just curious as to the level of granularity you have data on individual facilities, or is it all just estimates based on, you know, public data sources of fuel throughput and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so it's most so on the mapping feature that Patrick and Alex went over. It starts off with an estimate. So we're applying, you know, sector adjusted, sort of normalized estimates per fuel class, per facility. And then the individual facility owners have the ability to update what we have modeled for them. So we would have, hey, you know, we see there's an XYZ distillate fuel oil, BTU consumption for the year, and they would say, no, it's actually A, B, and C because we're at half capacity. So there's that ability for the facility owner to see what we have and then update it with what they actually have on their side.
Okay, thanks.
One interesting thing, and this is Eli Gerson at Ameren. One interesting thing is, it gets more trued up, right? If you integrate with the meter data, better, obviously, if it's AMI, better than AMR, et cetera. But another interesting thing to your question, and I'm not sure if you meant it this way, but is, there's certainly, if you want to have the industrial customer themselves sign up programmatically or use this tool, is certainly interesting. But another really nice element is if you're looking at a higher up level, if you're looking at as a customer being a city, a county, a regional body or group, a operating company, utility, state, whatever it might be, the fact that the platform has it split out by the different sectors, it's really helpful too. So when we were having discussions with the city of St. Louis and St. Louis County in particular for this, at least what I recall, having it broken down that way was important. That's how they do their reporting and how they're looking for impact as well. So even if they're not necessarily signing up as customers themselves, as an iteration of how you might, do a pilot or a program, it's really good to have it split up in all those ways.
And
I
Rick,
did get
I
a
may also
question.
ask. Well, Rick, I'd like to expand on your question just a little bit more and just understand if there are specific programs that y'all have for those industrial customers, or would be curious how your utility looks at deploying some of the programs for its industrial customers, because I think that's what was really beneficial with our program is we could ingest a lot of those programs to talk to industrial customers. So
Right. No, we do have some. It depends on the operating company, but we do have some programs specifically targeted to large industrials. And our primary method of engagement right now is just direct one-on-one customer engagement. And so, yeah, I mean, it's this interesting concept. So I appreciate the information. It's helpful.
We did have one question come in. What type of work is the Dynamhex team doing around the improvement of EV charging infrastructure in the U.S.?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and get started on this, and others could follow. So again, since we start with regional and locational emissions profiles, typically we, on the transportation side, we show a couple of things: the current penetration of EVs by zip code for any locality, the impact of transitioning from a motor gasoline or diesel passenger or heavy duty vehicle to electric, what that would do in terms of the emissions profile for a fleet owner or even for an individual passenger at the asset level, and then aggregate that up to the municipality, city, or county. As part of that, we do ingest data from AFDC, from DOE, on current charging infrastructure across the US, so we can show readiness today, future projections from cities' climate action plan on how much of their forward-looking action plan says transportation will electrify, and then render sort of readiness indexes both at the municipal level and more finer geospatial resolutions like census tracts or census blocks. Within the platform itself, we are able to help our enterprise customers upload their fleet data. We can showcase things like, hey, what would happen if heavy duty ran on CNG versus diesel? What would happen if sedans were electrified? So we do certain enterprise level transportation planning, but at the regional level, much of what we showed here today, we would do EV readiness from the standpoint of regional electrification goals.
May I go back just to say, in addition to the heavy industrial, and this, I know this isn't exactly the audience, but we also can work with any of the military bases or any of the government facilities that are in your region. So we can. What's great about the data is we can pull it through the different verticals, because you may have a different interaction with the government than you do with the commercial community. Or so I just want to add that.
That was a good point, Ann. Thank you. During the project, what was great was we did have that diversity of client mix. So being able to look at both what commercial enterprise that may be headquartered in the utility region but have locations everywhere, how they may be working with the local utility in their, where their headquarters are, but have to deal with or communicate with the large customer service reps and all the other places that they're dealing with. So having that coordinated communication was really fascinating to see from the voice of that customer, which was wonderful. And I'll maybe flip it over to Eli to see like what other kind of customer feedback that they got, because I think from what he shared with us, it was really positive and really helpful to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did it with a variety of different customers. So we looked to get feedback from kind of county level executives or folks from the city, from kind of emissions groups or environmental groups, specific large customers as well, and then universities groups. So at kind of different levels of feedback for the different group. A lot of it comes down to, if you're connecting with the people who directly manage the energy and are looking for specific tools, there's a lot of geeking out over all the inputs and how all the mechanisms and nuts and bolts work within the platform. And then, for a lot of the other customers, it's really looking for, okay, how do we use this? What is the benefit to us, right? How does this make it clear what my next step should be? How could this help me make an argument for the other stakeholders or kind of justify the cost associated with any of this programming? And another interesting thing too is internally trying to think about how this, platform like this could be helpful for us. Is of course, the relationship with the customer and being able to be proactive with them, as well as, this could be a really interesting platform or tool to use if you're looking at, we have an energy efficiency program, and we have this much marketing that goes into this program. Where should you market that based off of where the uptake is not as high as it should be, or you think the benefit would be higher, et cetera? Those types of impacts I think are really interesting to look at. And as we hopefully develop more products and services too, those are also things that a platform like this could help us understand and think about the impact for our community. So I think the neat thing is how different it can benefit different customers as well as us as utilities. So a lot of different ways to drive value, and still early kind of in our path to this, but this really, I think, really helping kickstart our understanding and thinking for it.
Well, yeah, and I think based on the survey results, I think it's early for a lot, but I think we're all kind of thinking about all of these topics right now at the same time. And if there's coordination in Washington, and locally, I think there's going to be a lot more voices to be heard on decarbonization efforts.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that, and Eli, thanks a ton for elaborating there. What I think is really important is that COP26 and Build Back Better are happening, and it's happening quickly. And all of a sudden, there's going to be this massive opportunity to explore energy efficiency in every different part of the country. And to have a platform that already has all of the data that can help in your decision making and help in your customer reach out, your prospecting, to have it already in-house and on board will help you deploy I'm sure there's a myriad of ideas coming through, and there's just a massive opportunity here. And so having a platform that can help you in an instant, once you launch a program, reach every single customer, I think is the time sensitivity of this opportunity is critical, and having somebody on board who can help you with that is really important. So having it for residential customers, small biz, commercial, C&I, municipal customers, being able to help every one of those different customers explore sustainability when that funding comes available is critical. So that's really an important point. And I'm curious, Shiva, I apologize for putting you on the spot. Hopefully you're still hanging around, but I know you have some thoughts around this, and some, representing EPRI, you have some great viewpoints. Would love to hear sort of your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the key areas I think that we are looking at is in seeing how, just the fundamental idea of doing a GIS-based building stock level analysis, but driving it based on the carbon footprint, I think is incredibly useful. And so looking at how we can devise approaches for electrification, for decarbonization at the stock level, but drive it from a GHG, the emissions reductions perspective, or from non-energy benefits perspectives, et cetera. I think the multifaceted analysis that is enabled by the tool, I think, is just really interesting for us to be able to explore for future opportunities, especially when we are, most of the questions that we get from our member utilities is not just centered on specific technologies, but application of a collection of technologies and how they work within the, within the environment, within the built environment, or in new construction, depending on what the research questions are. So for sure, yes, absolutely. A great opportunity to be able to use the tool, the platform for those purposes.
Thanks, Eva. Alex, something to add from my mind to what you're saying as well. At Ameren, at least, we're still trying to wrap our heads around, all of the funding that's going to become available, and how do you get it? How do you work with customers, et cetera, around those goals? One of the nice things about a platform like this is it builds in those kind of a community of support around that goal together. And I think that's something, still remains to be seen for some of this current legislation for us, but in general, the more cohesive you can put together a group and being able to track and measure and get that alignment, I think you put yourself in a better position to, one, just get a coalition together to actually put together proposals meaningfully, but then also compared to other opportunities, I think it always looks better when you can show multiple stakeholders on the same page for it. So hopefully platforms like this are going to help realize those benefits faster, more fairly, and in a way designed to get impact fast.
And yeah, so kind of just hitting on the point, that's why the standard approach to how traditional stakeholders look at their emissions and costs are very important. Being able to be backward compatible with some of the corporate accounting standards for C&I customers, being compatible with the municipal government, local government standards, which differ a lot of times, and since people can't explicitly know where they differ, it's really heavy transaction costs in trying to get the proposals to make sense to someone in the city, which might differ to someone like a facilities manager within a corporation. And the platform's doing this underlying piece at scale. So regardless of where the locations are or what the market structure is for energy or power, we're able to answer those questions and streamline the basic necessary assumptions needed to even understand what these proposals mean, right? Like, so we're going through a lot of use cases like that all across the U.S. And as carbon accounting standards morph and change, and I know SEC is looking at climate disclosures themselves, we're able to add in software libraries to the platform. So it's kind of, it's updating to the newest best in class on carbon accounting at the asset level and physical monitoring of emissions locationally. What is the concentration of emissions on top of St. Louis? That's a number. Well, does it really come from power gen? Is it oil and gas? Is it transportation? Like being able to sectorally classify and true up. I think that's the future of decarbonization. That's the future of, location-based sustainability.
Bob, it looks like you're muted.
Hi, sorry about that. Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, Robert Cruikshank. I really appreciate being able to participate, and thank you all for putting this on. I have a question about monitoring individual generation facilities. So like I studied Texas as part of the dissertation, my PhD, and it's like 600 generators, and I kind of came up with this idea that if you ran any one of them at their maximum heat rate without starting, stopping, or ramping, that you would minimize the carbon signature, but you'd also minimize the cost. They were kind of coincident objectives. So as you think about that, could you, or what do you think are the merits of sort of doing a day ahead hourly forecast for a service area, where normally the I'm thinking about this, right? The utility does like a production cost model to figure out what generators they're going to run. But if you took the area under the curve, like for Texas, a terawatt hour for a day approximately, and then you said, well, let's meet that terawatt hour by running all the thermal generation at its maximum heat rate without starting, stopping, or ramping, and then we put the renewable signature on top, whatever the wind and solar is going to be, so that sort of that shape is our cheapest way to the end of the day from a carbon and a cost point of view. And then you monitor how well, like you show that with devices, whether they're smart hot water heaters or air conditioners or electric vehicle chargers or battery walls, like everything can get the same shape without having to sign up or opt in. If it's on an interval rate or like on a dynamic rate, if it shapes its load, it's going to save money. And then could we calculate the carbon savings as the devices participate? It's kind of a lot to throw into the conversation, but if anybody wants to further that conversation, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, no, that's. Oh, sorry. I was gonna just jump in and say we have been. So my past venture was in energy storage, so we did a lot of just charging, discharging based on both load side, predictability, and what we have historicals on what's generating when on the utility side. We typically don't have control either way, so there has to be a layer that does overrides. Obviously, can't do it on the utility side. Can sometimes do on the device side, depending on the device. I think that's a future. I think right now there are such severe silos on both load, on supply and demand, that doing it round trip would be doable maybe in a lab, but I think there's severe roadblocks in doing it at scale. And there have been a lot of emerging, Energy Web Foundation, there's like blockchain based kind of incentive structures of controlling devices. However, we haven't seen like a scalable real deployment with customers yet. But again, like for us, it's just different webhooks, different fields. We know how to classify generation. We know how to classify time, UTC. We can do day ahead by markets, but pulling it all together and putting a carbon kind of layer on top of that, I think would solve what you're trying to solve. And we would love to, play a role in that future when it eventually gets here.
Great. We made a standard out of it. In this, I'm a cable guy. We made a standard for what we called optimum load shaping of electric vehicles and battery chargers. And the thought was, again, you define the cheapest way to the end of the day from the supply side, you share that with the demand side, and anything it does to shape its load is saves itself money. I put the spec in the chat, and I appreciate being able to share it with you guys. Thank you.
That's great insights. I'd love to hear what Shiva may have to say about that as well, from EPRI's point of view, because I think that data integration was at least really fascinating in some of our earliest conversations at how different standards and ways of looking at things could be restructured to how we present the data. So as long as you have good structured data up front, turning over to a different standard or communicating my standard with your standard becomes a lot easier. So
yeah. No, absolutely. I think that was one of the key points that I found very interesting with the tool, was that the status quo here is for practitioners who start looking at doing building stock analysis or even trying to do estimation of carbon footprint, et cetera, to have a starting point of a lot of data, right? Whether it's in the form of the building level consumption data, or data that is or a combination of data that is that talks about the marginal emissions at the grid level, to be able to do these sorts of estimates. With the tool, with this platform, the practitioner can go in and use the publicly available pre-integrated data sources to start getting an estimate from day one, and then start tuning it, and then start showing it up with their own data. I think that's one of the more interesting aspects of this tool, and definitely one that sets us up right from day one, because it actually provides a baseline estimate that can then be built on top of and refined. But I think there are some incredible potential here. For example, one of the biggest areas where I think our future perhaps areas is, there's been a lot of talk about buildings to grid integration, for example, with using real-time pricing signals or some such mechanism that provides an indication of the grid need so that the buildings can respond to it. I think there's an opportunity to actually use the grid carbon signal itself, and then use the real-time estimates that the methodology behind this platform provides, so as to be able to affect these sorts of controls. So there is definitely a lot of opportunity here, at least from my perspective, in terms of how the fundamental building blocks of this platform, as well as the application of this platform, can also kind of evolve further.
Stephen, when you think about a real-time carbon signal or real-time pricing signal, how do we solve the first grade soccer problem? Where like everybody's trying to swim to that time, but that's no longer the signal. That's no longer the price or the carbon anymore, because everybody just swarmed there.
Right. No, that's always a challenge. You're right. I think we can start off with doing something like a day ahead or a few hours ahead type of approach. And then try to get as close to real time as possible. But you are right. Real time is within quotes.
Yeah. That's the problem I was running into. My model was, it was like a binary decision for a thermostat or a water heater or a battery to charge or not charge. And in the presence of an analog price signal, even day ahead, hourly, it would just wait for the cheapest possible times, and then, but turns out everything waited for the cheapest possible times.
Right.
And there, so, that's why I call it the first grade soccer problem. I didn't see how to get around that. And then I've heard about solutions like, well, just only tell a quarter of the devices.
Right.
But then you don't have everything working for you.
Yeah. No, you've hit upon the right problem there, and not to geek out more about it, but I think perhaps using real-time or sort of day-ahead marginal carbon emissions is perhaps better, only from the sense that there is a sharper differential between periods of low and high carbon content on the grid, much more than real-time pricing, which tends to be, a much lower price differential. When we have done studies on buildings controls based on retail time of use rates, we have always found that the sharper the difference between the peak rates and off-peak rates, the better the customer acceptance and the customer willingness to manage their own energy use. So there is, but nevertheless, I think from the decarbonization as a service platform perspective, Dynamhex is headed sort of in the right direction in terms of being able to sort of bring in all these emotions together and then center it based on decarbonization and carbon content.
Yeah, thanks, Shiva, so much for the explanation and a little bit of an endorsement there. We only have a couple of minutes left, and so I wanted to sort of leave with a parting thought, which is that for any of the utilities that are on the call today, we'd love for you to think through a particular problem that you have that we could help you solve and address, just to give you a feel for what working with us is like. So whether that be an analysis of your industrial customers or something to support affordable housing programs in advance of Build Back Better, we'd love to start working down the path of letting you see our data and letting you see and feel how powerful the platform can be, because we're very confident in our ability to bring a lot of value to your organization for a myriad of challenges, and just getting you in the door and letting you touch and see it, I think would be a great start. So please feel free to reach out to any of us, and we would love to follow up and have a conversation about your specific utility and your specific challenges.
I believe we do have one more question.
Oh,
Caleb?
Hey, good afternoon. Caleb Knight with the Knoxville Chamber in Knoxville, Tennessee. My question actually kind of relates to what you just said. What markets are you guys seeing the most engagement with, and what are kind of the qualities that you're looking for in a customer? Is it power providers, LPCs? What's kind of y'all specific market you're looking for?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have data that supports residential, commercial, small biz, industrial, and municipal. Where we've started and where we've focused thus far has been with utilities and with local governments. So we have a handful of cities. We are hoping to be under contract with the county very soon, and also have worked with a handful of utilities to evaluate particular problems. So that's sort of where we're starting, and we've seen a lot of traction there and a lot of interest in the last 6 months. Really, it's really picked up in that it seems like almost every utility has a challenge that we can help with, and it's identifying that challenge and developing a statement of work that is appropriate for getting going. That's where that's sort of where it starts. But we're helping gas companies that are looking for, they have a bunch of lines that they've recently acquired, and they're curious which of their customers are still using or which zip codes are still fueled, the heating is still fueled by propane, so that they can convert those customers to natural gas. That's a carbon reduction strategy. Other utilities are looking at deploying rooftop solar or energy efficiency rebates or programs, and they want us to help prospect for those programs before they're launched. And then on the municipal side, a lot of cities have a stated carbon goal or are looking to come up with a carbon reduction goal. And so some of our customers are really advanced and far along in the process, and they're looking at us as a great solution to give them a point in time estimate and then monitor their success going forward. And we have other customers who are very early in the journey, who are just looking for some data that can help inform their decisions so that they don't overcommit to something, or that they can set the appropriate levels of expectations and know what they're getting themselves into. So I would say it's a pretty broad range, but focused primarily on electric and gas utilities, with municipal customers being sort of the next entry point.
Yeah. Are you able to disclose which geographies you're seeing the most activity in? It's okay if you're not.
Yeah, no, I think you would be surprised. So we have some uptake in Middle America, so Illinois, Kansas, Missouri, a lot of interest in the Mid-Atlantic right now, working with a handful of utilities there, and then even in the southern United States, southeastern United States. So we're working with electric utilities that are in the southeastern U.S. Who are evaluating. So rooftop solar obviously makes a lot of sense in these sunny states, and so it's really been every different part of the country at this point has reached out in some form or fashion, and we're working towards contracts with all of those customers.
Thank you.
And I'll just do a quick add-on that we've mostly deployed where we are. So, we have offices located in Midwest and Mid-Atlantic. We're about to deploy in California, which is where Alex is. But with our data and how we've run the models, we can deploy anywhere. So we've got every building. So that's one of the benefits of what we're bringing to table is the ability to deploy quickly. So get data quickly in where you are rather than just where we are.
Right. So sign a contract with us, and then 3 weeks later, you've got an entire layout of the city of Knoxville, and we're looking at it a number of different specific ways. So just to give you a feel for what the timing and where we're at as far as the product is we can help you almost immediately as soon as we're under contract.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would be out of my hands, but definitely interested to kind of see some use cases of how you guys have been able to improve other markets, other municipalities that we compete with, and how you've helped them become more competitive. I can message one of y'all my email, but that's information that's pretty relevant to some of the things we're doing here.
Great, thanks, Caleb. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and feel free to message Alex if you put your information just in the chat for everyone else. To feel free to reach out to Alex. We'd be happy to communicate. Some of those use cases and other ways that we've been helpful. It looks like we're about at time. I'd like to save any parting thoughts to our partners at Ameren or EPRI. Again, we are super thankful to have been able to sponsor this, and we think the best is yet to come. So, Shiva or Eli, any final words?
Well, just, we really enjoyed the pilot that we did. Still talking about what comes next. And, this is a really important and growing space. Customers are demanding solutions in this area. We need to be ready as utilities to understand their goals, take action on their goals. And this is a really intriguing way to do that.
I think you're muted again, Alex.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. Thank you all so much again for your time. We really appreciate it. And hope to be in touch with some of you very soon. So thanks again, and have an awesome day.